Hello, and welcome to the 100th episode of Improbable Things. I'm J. Grace Pennington, and this is my podcast where I share 6 improbable thoughts before breakfast, which consists of 6 thoughts about reading, writing, or storytelling in general. So I have got 6 very special thoughts for you today for my 100th episode, so let's get started. So I was supposed to record this special 100th episode last week, but then I lost my voice from allergies yet again. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know that this tends to occur a few times a year. So that was disappointing, but now my voice is back. And what I decided to do to make this 100th episode special is, instead of coming up with 6 things of my own, I wanted to answer 6 questions from listeners. So I've gathered together those, and I'm really excited to answer these and talk with y'all for the 100th time. So number 1, I have this question from Sarah. She asks, how many books will be in the Firmament series? So that's a great question and interesting story behind that. So there are supposed to be 18 books in all, and I just published the 10th. So, more than halfway through, which is exciting. And how that came about. So basically, when I first started the series, I had the idea for the characters and the setting more than anything. And I sort of cobbled together the first story based on a few different things. And then after I'd written that first story, I was just super excited and really loved spending time with these characters. And there were certain things I wanted to do with them, things I wanted to try, situations I wanted to put them in. So I sat down and I wrote out a bunch of very brief synopses, very basic, really not even any plot, anything, just kind of a general seed of an idea for what I wanted to do in each book. And when I originally wrote those down, I actually had 24 of them. And then over the next, I would say, couple years, I kind of refined the list a little bit. I combined a few of the stories and I eliminated a few that I just realized I didn't want to tell. And then at some point, still quite a while ago, I think it was almost a decade ago, I settled down to these 18 books, and I've really stuck with that, although some of the ideas have changed over time, either sort of grown with the series or just I get to the story and realize there's not really much of an actual story there and have to adjust. But still, I've kept to those general 18 installments. And so there should, in theory, be 8 more. I haven't worked on my first draft for book 11 since I last talked with y'all 2 weeks ago. And honestly, it has been nice to have a break, but I want to step in and finish the last few thousand words on that draft, maybe this coming week. So anyway, it's supposed to be 18 books, and we're on track for that. And then hopefully in the next few years, the series will be wrapped up, which is going to be so weird, and I'm really going to miss these characters when that happens. Number 2, Callista asks, how do you choose names for characters? And I love this question because I love naming things. And it's always fun for me to sit down and name a character. Now, there's kind of 2 parts to this. There's naming real, actual characters that are really important to the series, and then there's just kind of having to name those side characters that very frequently come up, they have to talk to somebody's secretary, or there's some low-level engineer on the ship that they have to do something with real fast, or whatever, people that don't ever even show up again. So for those people, honestly, I have an app on my phone called Name Dice. And you just it literally has these 2 little dice, with one with first name and one with last name, and you tap the screen and it just gives you a randomized first and last name. And so I'll kind of tap through those until I find something that sounds good or sounds different from other names I have, and just throw that in there. So for characters that, are not really actually characters, I just do that. Now, obviously, if it's a character that is really vital to the series, that we're really going to be spending a lot of time with, it's something I take a lot more time and effort on. And it really has varied. So a lot of times, honestly, there is a name that just comes to me that's just like, that's the name. Like for Andy Lloyd herself, like that, I can't even explain how I came to that. It's just, that just was the name. It just was her name always. And but then for others, it took some more time, or sometimes I'll have a last name, but it takes more time to get the first name, or vice versa. And that was the case with Captain Trent. I had the last name Trent, but I really wanted him to have something really special for his first name and then also his middle name. Like I wanted him to have this like really industrious, like bold, sort of like captainly kind of name. And so when I was a kid, there was one dictionary that we had that had a whole list of names and their meanings in the front of it. And so I specifically remember with naming Captain Trent that I was doing the dishes and I asked my brother Adam, who was pretty little at the time, like he was like a little kid, and I handed him that dictionary. I was like, "Here, find me a name for Captain Trent." And so he read through some different names and their meanings while I did the dishes, and we talked about it, and we ended up with he ended up helping me find both the captain's first and middle name. So we now have Captain Harrison Alastair Trent. And so then sometimes names will kind of have a reason. Like, for example, then when the captain's brother comes on the scene, I realize, okay, same parents are naming this guy. So he needs sort of a first and middle name that's going to kind of, jive with the captain's name. So sometimes there's things like that. And then a lot of times it really is like I have a lot of different places I go to for names. At one point, when I was pretty early on writing the series, maybe like the second or third book, I put in, this was, I was single and had no kids, so I had time to do stuff like this. I put in the extended edition, Fellowship of the Ring DVD onto my computer, and it not only has end credits, but it has this like extended end credits where they have the names of like, I think everyone in the whole Lord of the Rings fan club or something like that. And so I watched through that, and every time I saw a name I thought was interesting, I wrote it down in a document. And so I had this whole, like database of names on my computer that I like. And so I'll occasionally go to that, like if I'm looking for a name, like just I have someone that's going to be like, a minor to largish character and need to find a name, I'll go to that. And then sometimes there's something that's a little more organic. Like there was a time when, again, I was back living at home. Most of my siblings were pretty young, and we used to just have the craziest conversations at the lunch and dinner table. And one time they were joking about what if you had a pilot whose last name was Crash. Like that would be hilarious. Be like, this is your pilot today is Mr. Crash. They were just going on about it. And I was just starting to work on the series and starting to work on the first book. And I was like, oh, I love that idea. And so I filed that away and used that. So there's a lot of different, I don't know, it's not really a one size fits all when it comes to names, but naming things is one of my favorite parts of the process, honestly. Like it's just like someone's name is something that's so vital to who they are, and getting to give that even to a fictional character. And then of course I've loved naming my kids as well, which is obviously more important. And so I don't know, there's just something about naming things that is super fun for me. So number 3, Jeremiah asks, do you ever struggle to stop a writing session once you've started, or find yourself in a strange state of mind after writing? And this is also a great question. And this is another sort of like, it just depends question, because writing sessions can just vary so incredibly from one to the other for me. And I don't know, it's like sometimes, I know I've talked before, like there's most of the time, like the vast majority of the time when I sit down to write, I don't feel like doing it, and it's like pulling teeth. And so sometimes that's the session the whole way through. Like I basically like crawl my way to my word count and eagerly stop, and I'm glad to be done. But there are also times that the session can kind of evolve into something that's flowing really well and that I'm really excited about. And then Either, I have something else to do or I have a kid calling for me or something. And it is hard to stop yourself like in the middle of that flow. But one thing that I have found though is that that can actually be a really good thing. Instead of stopping, like once you sort of run out of inspiration and run out of the drive and the motivation and gotten out of the zone, stopping in the middle of that, even though it can be hard because you feel like, oh, I just want to keep going. It actually is easier to start up the next writing session if I stopped like excited for where it's going and sort of in the flow and in the zone of it. It can be easier to start again next time that way, because even if I'm not in the same frame of mind, even if some of that feeling of being in the moment, has obviously faded away, there's still that sense that like I know where this is going. Like I know where we're going from here. I know what's coming next. Like I feel like I have direction, and that is such a great feeling to sit down with when writing, and it's so honestly kind of uncommon that it's worth it for me to stop while in the zone, even though that can be a little bit painful, because I know that like, okay, next time I sit down to write, it's going to feel so much better than usual. So I like that. And then as for being in a strange state of mind after writing, yeah, again, it kind of depends on how the session has gone. A lot of times, it just kind of feels like, whew, glad that's over. Just being honest, because it can be so difficult. But there are those times where like, and especially again, for me, I'm really all about the characters. So when you have those great character moments and when you have some like really strong, like something really powerful relationship themes going on, or when there's something really sweet, really sad, like I don't know, when there's those real moments of relationship and character building drama, which is just the stuff that I just live for when writing. After that stuff, it can feel weird to then step away from that depth of experience back into the real world. And you're still kind of like existing in the space of like, oh, this person just died, or, oh, this character just had this enormous epiphany that's going to affect all these other things. And then to like remove yourself from that immersion and go back into like, okay, and now it's time to go put the laundry in the dryer or whatever. And so it is weird. Like it just the fact that we have these worlds and these people that are so real to us that have just sprung completely out of our own minds is just a weird sort of like surreal feeling. And I'll definitely also feel that not necessarily just after a writing session, but after a book is finished, like after finishing a first draft or after hitting publish, like those huge milestone completions, it feels really weird to step away and be like, all right, well, done with that forever. Like, I don't know. It's just such, like I said, a surreal feeling where you have this whole other world and people that really matter to you. And then when you step away, it's like they don't even exist. So yeah, it's a really kind of a weird dynamic. All right, so then Sarah wants to know what has been your favorite book to read to your kids, she asks. And that's a tough one because we've really enjoyed a lot of books. We love reading together. I can tell you what my kids' favorite has probably been, and that is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which is really not my favorite. It's just a little strange for my tastes, but they love it, and they have gone on to like read it again and like listen to it and watch the movie and act it out like all the time. So there's that, but it's definitely not my favorite. Man, I really have to think about that. I know we're reading through the Little House series right now, and that's been really good, like such a good perspective and just on life and how life used to be and how really spoiled we are now. So I like that aspect of it. I like that it's giving us perspective. I'm able to say to my kids, like, look how blessed we are with all the things we have, and that we're not, starving in a blizzard, like having to twist hay into sticks to keep ourselves warm and eat nothing except potatoes with salt. Like, oh my goodness. The contrast I feel like is really powerful, and I'll often be tearing up reading it to my kids. So I like those books for that. I'm trying to think what else we've read through. Honestly, so far, those have probably been my favorites. And I think it's partly that, but it's also partly, I think it has to do with the stage where my kids are, that this is the most, so, at this point that they've been able to really like understand and get into the story and think about it and have questions about it just because they're getting older. And so they'll often think about like, and they'll ask me about blizzards, or they'll be like, Mommy, I'm so sad that there's another blizzard or whatever. Or they'll want to know more about, or they'll just kind of will be going throughout the day and they're like, Mommy, I'm so sad that Mary is blind. Or, they're really taking in the story and what it means for the characters. And that is so much fun to see, and to see them like developing and thinking about those things. So I think so far I'd probably have to say that those books, just that series has been my favorite. We're on the long winter right now, so just a few more left after this. But honestly, I know there's so much more I'm planning to read to them that I know my answer is definitely going to change, because I'm really excited for some of the things we're looking forward to reading. Like after this, I think I'm going to read them the Chronicles of Narnia, which I'm so excited about. I've been looking forward to reading those books to my kids since way before I ever had kids. And then some of my family's favorite read alouds I have ready to go. Like I've been collecting them over the past few years. So we have Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim, which was one of my family's favorite read alouds. Island of the Blue Dolphins, Where the Red Fern Grows, which I don't know how I'm going to make it through that. I'm already crying reading the Little House book. So there's a lot that I'm really looking forward to. So I'm also going to have to keep y'all updated as we go through different books on this podcast, because yeah, reading aloud, it was not only a big part of growing up for me being read to by my mom, but also then I just spent a lot of time reading books to my siblings as well once I was older, and those were really sweet memories. And so I've been looking forward to this for a long time, being able to read to my kids, and it's just been so much fun. And like I said, to see them grow in their ability to appreciate the stories, it's just the greatest thing. So, number 5, Adam asks, have you ever collaborated with another author on a work? How would you work with them? And if not, would you ever consider doing so? Which I love this question again. And it's again another answer that's kind of it depends. And it depends on what you mean by collaboration. So, when it comes to like writing a single story with another author, I don't think I've ever really done that, unless you count the story that my brother Jacob and I wrote when we were like, I don't know, like 7 and 9 maybe. um, the closest I've gotten is that there was a short story that I wrote once. It's a sci-fi short story several years ago, and an author friend of mine came in and did some of his own edits, and we went back and forth a few times, both editing it. And that was a good experience because, he was able to sort of look at it and just have a little bit more of an objective viewpoint than I could editing it myself, and just kind of fix some weak spots a little bit. And so that was a great experience, and I would definitely consider doing something like that again. As far as like actually like developing and writing a story like together, like that whole process with another author, that I don't believe I've really done. It is something I would definitely consider, if I could find the right person to collaborate with, like, somebody that had, that we could have similar enough, I guess, interests and viewpoints that, would be compatible to write together, but also someone that had very different strengths and weaknesses. And actually, this is something that my husband and I have talked about doing someday, because although he doesn't pursue it now, he loved writing a lot when he was younger. And interestingly, like as I've mentioned this episode and many other times, for me it's really about the relationships and emotion and characters. But so I feel like that's my strength in writing, but my weakness for sure is any type of like action, just anything that involves like setting, like world building, like the real concrete type stuff, and describing and coming up with like any type of action scenes, like any of that, I'm just so bad at. I don't enjoy it. I don't feel like it goes well. And then I've had criticisms of it in my published work from some readers. However, for my husband, it's the total opposite. Like, he loves that kind of like action and description type stuff and really does not like doing like the character and relationship drama. So we've said like we could write the perfect story someday. And so, like maybe when the kids are older or something, we would like to try to write a book together. I have no idea what that would be. We haven't gotten that far yet, but we're definitely, it's on the bucket list, I guess I'd say. Now, as far as like, I have collaborated on collections with other writers quite a few times, and that's been a really good experience. I've done, the several of the Very Bookish holiday collections where multiple writers came together with a specific set of criteria and each written their own story and then published it as a collection. I've done stories for the Christmas, Thanksgiving, and Valentine's Day collections, and that was awesome. I've done the same for, we had a collection of fairy tale retellings several years ago that I contributed to, and all of those were awesome experiences. I loved working with these other authors. I loved promoting the works together, and it was so much fun. And I like going into a project with some like clear guidelines, and so that was a lot of fun. And just seeing the range of stories that came out of even everyone who would go in with, the specific set of, write a story about a girl who loves a particular book and then a particular work of classic literature, and then elements of that book are reflected in her life. And, it has to be faith-based, and it has to be, whatever specific guidelines. And the stories that would come out of it were just so diverse, and the different styles and different emphases. And I thought that was so much fun to see. So I've loved doing that and would definitely do that again. And then there is a project that I was many years ago developing with my friend Rachel Newhouse, author of the Red Rain series. And I actually haven't talked to her about this yet, so don't get excited, but I wanted to talk to her at some point about reviving this idea where we were going to write a series together. A series of sort of standalone, but in the same world type, steampunk fairy tale retellings. And we had developed a couple of the ideas, and I actually wrote one of mine already. And I think she wrote but hadn't published one of hers. I don't want to get ahead of myself. But anyway, and so we had like developed a few ideas for that, and we were going to, again, kind of develop the stories together, write them separately, and then work together on the editing. And I was really excited about those back in the day. And we're both really busy with our young adult sci-fi series right now. Like, she's focusing a lot on Red Rain, which everyone should definitely check out. Great series. And I'm focusing a lot on Firmament. But I do want to talk to her at some point and be like, hey, when these series are done, are you interested in returning to that project? Because I think it was so much fun and I loved her ideas, and I would really be interested to revisit that. So stay tuned. We'll see if that happens. Obviously, I will let you guys know. But so that's a very long answer to say, like, again, depends on what you mean by collaboration, but whatever you mean, I'd definitely consider it with the right author. So number 6, Morgan asks, are Alazone and Andy going to get married at some point? And she's been asking me this for years. And so sadly, I still must refuse to answer that because, obviously, spoilers, cannot reveal anything about the future of the series, but I can talk about what has already happened. And so there are people that have been shipping those two characters for quite a while. And I will say one thing that's been important to me in the Firmament series, obviously, is making it appropriate and clean for, very conservative, like Christian young adults. And so any romance that does ever develop in the series would be mild or would be, obviously very clean. But, those things are part of life. And so they do happen. And so anyway, so far, I would say there's been in the stories, like we got to the point once Alazone joined the crew of the Surveyor, there have been comments from characters toward Andy, being like, oh, anything going to happen between y'all? And Andy's always been very resistant to any type of romantic relationship. She's not interested. She's busy, she doesn't want to pursue anything along those lines. But as she and Alazon have spent a lot of time together, been close friends, people have been, the last few books, saying like, hey, what's going on here? And she's been very resistant. But I will say there were a few interesting developments to their relationship, which is all I'm going to say, in the latest book, Progenitor. Some potential changes in perspective for certain characters. And so if you haven't read Progenitor yet, you can read it and see if that gives any direction to the answer to this question. But ultimately, my answer, of course, is that you'll just have to wait and see over these next 8 books, see what happens, see if anything happens, who knows? I don't ever reveal my secrets, and so stay tuned. But that topic has been addressed a little bit over the past couple of books. There have been conversations between Andy and people who care about her, and thoughts that she has in her own mind that address this particular question. And so I will just have to direct you to the actual books and give the answer that I give my girls basically anytime they ask me about anything that's happening, which is just to wait and see. Thank you all so much for listening to this special 100th episode. I've had so much fun answering questions, and I just want to say anytime that you have any questions for me about any of these subjects, writing, books, reading, storytelling, whatever, please do send them my way. I'd love to answer more questions at any point on the podcast. It's very helpful for me, then I don't have to come up with all of the 6 things on my own. And plus, for me, this podcast exists because I want to share something that will really be of value to you. I want to talk about what you want to hear. And I want to encourage other writers, other busy people who care about being creative. And that's a huge motivation for me to do this podcast, is to encourage people to pursue their artistic and creative endeavors just where you are in your life in the way that you can. And so whatever you want to hear about along those lines, please let me know, because that's what I want to talk about. So thank you all so much, everyone who has not only listened to this episode, but stuck with me over these past few years for 100 episodes of me rambling on about these things. I appreciate it so much, and I just love sitting down and talk with you all, and I'm really looking forward to however many episodes lay ahead in the future. So again, thank you all so much for listening. I hope that everyone has a great day and a great weekend ahead, and stay improbable. Bye!